Hello guys, how are you? Today we have here a crank no start of this Fiat Punto 188, the engine being an A4000, the 8 valve one. So the car does not run at all, okay? It just cranks and it does not start. The customer said that previous of this, it was very difficult to start the engine only if you accelerated hard enough, okay? That is very strange for these engines. Also, I noticed something that is very peculiar when I'm trying to do the starting. I'm just here starting my diagnosis so I can see if I see something. So pay very close attention to the sound of the engine. And almost wanted to start. It seems there is missing compression on one cylinder. So yeah, maybe we have two problems. The first problem being a crank no start, okay, but previous of that, maybe the engine is rough on start because of low compression. And of course, we will test all of that. So here you go again. Again, my machine is in Portuguese and is not switchable to English. Sometimes some things appear in English, but that is just it, okay? So the first thing you may want to see if are there any fault codes? And no, there are no fault codes at all. And this is where people start to freak out because no fault codes means everything is okay. Not quite, okay? So live data, and while that charges, let me just give you some info here. Normally on these engines, when you have this crank no start or a very rough start, and the car has a lot of misfires, you have, yes, fault codes for ignition coils right here, but the problem is not the ignition coils themselves. The problem is the ECU, that little one. I'll show you in a minute when we are to disassemble everything, okay? That little module on top goes bad, okay? Unfortunately, that happens. And when that happens, you just slap it a new one, it's very cheap, and everything is okay. I don't think that is what's happening on this car. So to have a starting of the engine of any modern car, what you want to have is first of all, make sure that your key is programmed. Make sure that the immobilizer is okay for that control unit. So what you want to see here is, yes, the immobilizer, but you also want to see RPM. You want to see the intake pressure or intake vacuum in this case, because sometimes that does not go well. If you have a bad intake sensor, the car may think it is a different altitude and inject a different quantity of fuel, not for this altitude, okay? The temperatures of the air and the water, already see them, they are okay, so I will not put that in here. Well, for you I might. The butterfly, the intake valve, I think it is not important right now. The starting of the engine, so arranque do motor means starting of the engine. It shows allow or not allow, okay? It will show in a moment. This one is to see if the control unit is programmed or not, and it is, but you will see in a moment, okay? And for now, I have here more stuff, but it's not relevant for now, okay? So I picked here the RPM of the engine. So you want to read about 200 RPM on that. One thing, when I do crank the engine, it will have a delay because the machine is old and the car is old too. So we will have a delay of information for that RPM sensor. And in fact, all of these parameters, okay, the intake pressure must drop once you are having the crank, because suction starts to appear and the intake must read that suction, so the intake pressure must drop. The temperature of the engine is 12 degrees and the temperature outside is 15. The starting of the engine, it is allowed. Permitido means allowed, and the control unit is programmed. Programada means programmed. Okay, so I'll do the cranking. So on this point, I know that my control unit is programmed, and I also know that my key, the immobilizer, it's working, and the control unit recognizes that immobilizer. So no keys, no rings, no immobilizer module, none of that we need to worry about, because the control unit says everything is okay. So starting the engine. the first parameter. It's a bit slow, okay? And it will start to appear 250 and the suction 996, okay? So no problems here on the immobilizer, no problems here on the RPM sensor. You have to see now the compression appears to be very strange. You have to see the spark, and we have to see if the injectors are injecting correctly. After pulling out here the HT leads and before removing the spark plugs, you must blow the spark plug holes in order to take out any debris it may have. So in that way, when removing the spark plug, the dust and debris and sand will not enter the engine. Oh my god. So here the first spark plug, it was really tight. Don't know if it was the angle that I was using here, but it really was difficult. The spark plug itself is good, apart from a lot of gasoline inside here. So the second one, same thing, same stuff. A little bit of carbon, just a bit, not really too much. A lot of gasoline, okay. This is the fourth one, because the third one I was not able to reach it. The gap seems to be a little bit off, and it is dry, too dry for my taste. Let's see, okay. Too dry. So the third one, a little bit of a debris, of plastic debris, was here, nothing too special. It also has gasoline impregnated on it, nothing really too much, I believe. Okay, now we have to see spark and injectors, I believe, and also, of course, the compression. Let's disconnect here the injector plugs, so I don't have any gasoline coming out of the holes. Can be dangerous with the spark. By testing the injectors here, they have 14 ohms each, which means on the electrical side of the injectors they are good. On the spark plugs, the same thing. Measuring the impedance of the spark plugs, they have 4.5 kilo ohms, so they are good. Next step is to switch up the position of the spark plugs to see if the problem persists on the same place. Okay, and then I switch up these two plugs to see if the problem switches up from one side to another, because these two are connected to the fourth and second cylinder, and this one to the first and third. So this line here is missing. Either is this line over here that goes directly here to the ECU. This is the ECU, very small, okay? And normally this is the problem. But I cannot shake this feeling that the engine has some problem, because as you can remember on the beginning of the video, I have a lumpy start on the engine, like a lack of compression. So we clearly have more than one problem on this engine, unfortunately. Good compression on first, low compression, very low compression on the second, the third is good, and the fourth one is too much, way too much. So this engine has to be overhauled for that, okay? But the customer is also a mechanic, he will take care of that. Just a heads up here with the spark plugs, when you are putting in the spark plugs on this engine, or in fact your gauge to see the compression, the position of the spark plugs, the first and second are like this to the left, and the third and fourth are like this to the right. So okay, so they are not straight on to the head, they are at an angle. Okay, be very careful with this, because this is an aluminum head and you will strap the threads of the head. Okay, so just like so, not so exaggerated, but it is for you to understand the problem. So problems with the engine itself, problems with the spark, possibly there, the ECU, and let's see the injectors, because normally they clog up because there is no filter on this line. If you are not comfortable to do this, please do not take a chance, okay? What I'm doing here is to take out any source of spark possible. I disconnect here the coils and everything is ready to go. As I turn the engine, if I have here good spray of fuel, it means that the system is working correctly. Here the fuel system, the pump is functioning correctly, and also here the RPM sensor and here the cam sensor is also good, okay? And that is at least one thing that is good or not. So to see the fuel pressure, we have to take out here the seat to a side and remove here the plug for the fuel pump. And on this plug we have two wires for the float, and we have two more wires for the pump itself. So we want to see if when the ignition is on, if we have 12 volts here on those two wires. With the probes over here, you want to just touch here the terminals. You don't want to push them in, okay? If you do so, you will damage the terminals. And you want to watch this. As you turn on the ignition, we should have 12 volts, and we have nothing, okay? So no 12 volts going to the pump. Now we want to see what we are missing. Are we missing the negative, or are we missing the positive? And to see that, I have here the two cables from the battery. As you can see, I have here 12 volts from the battery, okay? And now I'll test the negative one here on the pump by testing the positive and relationship to that negative, okay? That will assure me that I have ground. To assure me that I have good ground, I have to do it with a bulb, okay? An H7, it is what I like to see. Because if I have bad ground, just with the multimeter, I may have 12 volts, but as soon as I have tension on the system, as soon as I have consumption on the circuit, I may have a drop of tension. I have my probe on the positive side of the battery. I will check out here one of these two wires for negative. This one does not have it, and the other one it has, okay? So now I just have to test this with the light bulb to really confirm if my ground is good. First of all, you want to test your light bulb, your assembly, okay? It works. Now one of the sides goes to the positive, on this case, and on the other side, we'll search for that negative. Make sure not to do this test for too long, because it can melt some wires, despite being very thick wires, we don't know, okay? But when to see the brightness of the bulb. So this one, it was not. It was the second one, but very bright. Another one. Okay, very good. Beware that this negative ground here, this beautiful negative ground, does not need the ignition on to be tested. Okay, at least on this car. And most of the cars that I know, they do not need the ignition on for this measurement. So we have the absolute sure that the negative is okay. Now we just need to find the problem with the positive. Now having this issue here with the positive normally means that the pump is bad and it causes a fuse or something to blow up. The fuses are good, but something else may be burned. Some connector, for example, may be burned. So we must test the pump by, for example, here on the positive, putting in a needle. Test if the needle is doing contact here with the terminal, and it is. Connect it in, And now we just have to inject positive on here, because we already have negative confirmed. And with positive here, if the pump spins and creates good pressure, it means that the pump itself is good. And if it is not, the pump is bad and the pump damaged something else. So I have live 12 volts here, and I can hear the pump working. Nice, very nice. Very good. Do not forget to take out the needle. Okay, and put in the clip. Well, we do have fuel pressure and injection. The injectors are good. That does not mean the system is solved. Well, what is happening here? This is a relay to actuate the fuel pump, okay? And the signal to activate this relay is sent by the ECU. The ECU is sending the signal because the relay works very well, and the relay has the tension of the battery to relay it to the pump, okay? But the electrical diagrams that I was able to find so far are not complete. I'm waiting here for another diagram from the dealership. I hope they can get it, because as I was able to see, the wire does not go directly to the pump. It stops here on this internal fuse box, the one that is attached to the body computer, and sends out into the fuel pump. I was able to saw that because the colors were not the same. I know that sometimes the colors do not coincide, because sometimes mid-trip they fuse together some wires and the color changes, but that is very rare to happen on Fiat models. On the exit here, down below, there are no wires that are not even the correct thickness, okay? So that is very strange. So that led me to think that the relay sends the signal to this fuse box, and this fuse box instead sends another signal to the pump. And indeed it does, because this is the wire for the pump. As you can see, it is the correct length, and as I put this 12 volts, you can hear that the pump works, okay? The problem may be on the exit here, on this box. The signal does not exit to the wiring. The problem can be on the wiring, and the problem can be on this internal fuse box. Or it can be on the alarm system, because the alarm system having an immobilizer can interrupt the fuel pump. I hope I can explain you better here what is going on, okay? This is the fuel pump, okay, that is inside the fuel tank. This is the inertia button that makes part of the negative side of the system. And as you can see, this system here is completely correct, because we tested it, everything, because we started at the plug over here and we finished it on the body of the car, testing this wire with the multimeter, with the battery, and with the light bulb, okay? So everything is good on this side. And also, as you can see, now that we inject the 12 volts on the positive side of the pump, it also works. So absolutely no problem here on the negative side, and no problem here on the inertia button. Sometimes that is very controversial, okay? Now the R9 is the relay, the direct relay. So it should be the direct relay to the motor, okay? The relay receives 12 volts positive from the battery through a fuse, okay? That is all correct, all is good, that is good. The exit is good. I pushed up a bit the relay, and with the probe of the multimeter I was able to see exactly 12.5 volts, whatever, exiting the relay, okay? And that also means that the actuation of the relay, the plus and minus, are also okay. So the ECU, the lines, the fuses, everything is absolutely perfect. What is not perfect is this path over here. The path between the relay and the motor. That is a little bit more than this. Turns out, midway, I have another fuse box, the internal fuse box, that is called the B2. And this B2 here that is attached to the body computer and sometimes even connected, okay, may have the issue. I also may have an issue on the body computer itself. But that is why I need the electrical diagrams. I'm a huge fan of electrical diagrams because I cannot waste time guessing stuff. I want to have this information. And the information is the following. What number comes out of this wire? Example number 3. What number reaches the V2? Example number 9. What number exits again the V2? Example 13. Okay? Following these numbers, the pin numbers, I have to have absolutely sure that, for example, I can have an exit of 12 volts positive, but it does not reach the B02, so wiring, okay? Or it reaches the B02, but does not exit, so the box or some signal to imagine this, an internal relay, okay? And the internal relay is not working correctly, or the signal to open it is not happening, for example, because of the alarm system. I hope I'm getting somewhere with this, okay? I hope you can understand this also. So the 12 volts that come out of this relay go into this purple and yellow wire, and it goes to the inside of the car, to this plug over here, the brown on number 9, yellow and purple, and exits there on the box to this number 32 here on this purple and black, okay, on the plug that is black and brown, and it's running. Well, let me explain you something. Never forget something. WD-40 or other deoxidizing products are your best friend on these kinds of situations. So I took out here the cover in order to put again the plug over there, very carefully, okay, to be able to, with all assembled, with the multimeter, the probe, check if the voltage reaches there. As I was doing so, the second time I turned the ignition, I hear the pump working. Well, that is not new actually, because sometimes the only thing that you have is bad contacts. As I was messing here with the contacts on the plugs, the problem fixed itself. So what I did was to inundate this with WD-40 and plug it back and forward a bunch of times. Next, you should use the dielectric grease, like I told you, to protect those terminals, okay? It's very crucial to treat your terminals. So as I turn on here the ignition, I should hear, with my left hand, I should hear the pump working. Voila. And now the car should work. Remember that the spark is very weak and the compression is very bad, so the car may or may not start. But I did found all of the problems, thank God. This one was tough. Meanwhile, I do here a total reset of the system. That reset will do the learning of the position of the intake valve. We will also learn another values for the car. In fact, reset everything, despite the problems with the compression and everything else. A lot of stuff was done here on the car, a lot of these connections, and sometimes cleaning the fault codes is not enough, okay? Doing a total reset will actually clear the memories of the learning procedures. This is in Portuguese, but initializing the parameters, executing here the adaptive parameters. It takes a while, okay? This is a very old car, and eventually, okay, done. So exit, and now, only now, you will read and clear the fault codes. Okay? Okay. And only now you can start your engine. If it starts, it has to stay running until the fan kicks in, okay? The full learning of the procedure, imagine that the car is running perfectly, the engine is good and whatnot. Once you start the car, do not accelerate, let it run until the fan kicks in. Yeah! Do you want to support my channel? Down on the description there are 2 links for help for the channel. One for Patreon, another one for PayPal, okay? Down on the description also there is a lot of information that can and will be useful for you. For this kinds of stuff, very complicated ones, these F16s are so noisy. For brakes, for suspension, for so much stuff. Down on the description, a lot of stuff that can and will be useful for you. I'll see you next time, guys. Bye!